people who re-enlisted in Baghdad. Just like the mother I met at the airport the other day, whose son was killed. And they all say to me that we don't want defeat. I know what it's like when an army is defeated. A war that I was in, where we had an army that it wasn't through any fault of their own, but they were defeated. And I know how hard it is for an army and a military to recover from that. We did, and we will win this one, and we won't come home in defeat and dishonor and probably have to go back if we fail.
Jim, let me just make a point. I've got a bracelet too, from from the mother of Sergeant Ryan David Jopek, given to me in Green Bay. And she asked me, can you please make sure that another mother's not going through what I'm going through? No U.S. soldier ever dies in vain, because they are carrying out the missions of their commander-in-chief. And we honor all the service that they've provided. And our troops have performed brilliantly. The question is, for the next president, are we making good judgments about how to keep America safe, precisely because sending our military into battle is such an enormous step. And the point that I originally made is that we took our eye off Afghanistan. We took our eye off the folks who perpetrated 9/11. They are still sending out videotapes. And Senator McCain, nobody's talking about defeat in Iraq, but I have to say that we are having enormous problems in Afghanistan because of that decision. And it is not true that you have consistently been concerned about what happened in Afghanistan. I mean, at one point, while you were focused on Iraq, you said, well, we can muddle through Afghanistan. You don't muddle through the Central Front on terror, and you don't muddle through going after bin Laden. You don't muddle through stamping out the Taliban. I think that is something that we have to take seriously, and when I'm president, I will.
You might think that with that kind of concern that Senator Obama would have gone to Afghanistan, particularly given his responsibilities as the subcommittee chairman. And by the way, when I'm subcommittee chairman, we take up the issues under my subcommittee. But the important thing is, I've visited Afghanistan, and I've traveled to Waziristan, and I've traveled to these places, and I know what our security requirements are, and I know what our needs are. And so the point is that we will prevail in Afghanistan, but we need the new strategy, and we need it to succeed. But the important thing is, if we suffer defeat in Iraq, which General Petraeus predicts we will, if we adopted Senator Obama's set date for withdrawal, then that will have a calamitous effect on Afghanistan and American national security interest in the region. Senator Obama doesn't seem to understand there's a connection between the two.
I have some good news and bad news for the two of you. You all are even on time, which is remarkable, considering we've been going at it.
It's a testimony to you, Jim.
Well, I don't know about that. But the bad news is that all my little 5-minute things have run over. So anyhow, we'll adjust as we get there. But the amount of time is even. New lead question, and it goes 2 minutes to you, Senator McCain. What is your reading of the threat from Iran right now to the security of the United States?
My reading of the threat from Iran is that if Iran acquires nuclear weapons, it's an existential threat to the state of Israel, and it is a threat to the region because the other countries in the region will feel a compelling requirement to acquire nuclear weapons as well. Now, we cannot allow a second Holocaust. Let's just make that very clear. But I have proposed for a long time, and I've had conversation with foreign leaders about forming a league of democracies. Let's be clear, and let's have some straight talk. The Russians are preventing significant action in the United Nations Security Council. I have proposed a league of democracies, a group of people, a group of countries that share common interests, common values, common ideals, and they also control a lot of the world's economic power. We could impose significant, meaningful, painful sanctions on the Iranians that I think could have a beneficial effect. The Iranians have a lousy government, so therefore their economy is lousy, even though they have significant oil revenues. So I am convinced that together we can, with the French, with the British, with the Germans, and other countries, democracies around the world, we can affect Iranian behavior. But have no doubt that the Iranians continue on the path to the acquisition of a nuclear weapon as we speak tonight. And it is a threat not only in the region, but around the world. But I'd also like to point out the Iranians are putting the most lethal IEDs into Iraq, which are killing young Americans. There are special groups in Iran that are coming into Iraq and are being trained in Iran. And there is the Republican Guard in Iran, which Senator Kyle had an amendment in order to declare them a sponsor of terror. Senator Obama said that would be provocative. So this is a serious threat. This is a serious threat to the security in the world. And I believe we can act, and we can act with our friends and allies and reduce that threat as quickly as possible. But have no doubt about the ultimate result of them acquiring nuclear weapons.
2 minutes on Iran.
Well, let me just correct something very quickly. I believe that the Republican Guard of Iran is a terrorist organization. I've consistently said so. What Senator McCain refers to is a measure in the Senate that would try to broaden the mandate inside of Iraq to deal with Iran. And ironically, the single thing that has strengthened Iran over the last several years has been the war in Iraq. Iraq was Iran's mortal enemy. That was cleared away. And what we've seen over the last several years is Iran's influence grow. They have funded Hezbollah. They have funded Hamas. They have gone from 0 centrifuges to 4,000 centrifuges to develop a nuclear weapon. So obviously our policy over the last 8 years has not worked. Now, Senator McCain is absolutely right. We cannot tolerate a nuclear Iran. It would be a game changer. Not only would it threaten Israel, a country that is our stalwart ally, but it would also create an environment in which you could set up an arms race in the Middle East. Now, here's what we need to do. We do need tougher sanctions. I do not agree with Senator McCain that we're going to be able to execute the kind of sanctions we need without some cooperation from countries like Russia and China that are, I think Senator McCain would agree, not democracies, but have extensive trade with Iran, but potentially have an interest in making sure Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. But we're also going to have to, I believe, engage in tough, direct diplomacy with Iran, and this is a major difference that I have with Senator McCain. This notion that by not talking to people we are punishing them has not worked. It has not worked in Iran. It has not worked in North Korea. In each instance, our efforts at isolation have actually accelerated their efforts to get nuclear weapons. That will change when I'm President of the United States.
Senator, what about talking?
Well, Senator Obama twice said in debates that he would sit down with Ahmadinejad, Chavez, and Raul Castro without precondition. Without precondition. Now here is Ahmadinejad, who is now in New York talking about the extermination of the State of Israel, of wiping Israel off the map. And we're going to sit down without precondition across the table to legitimize and give a propaganda platform to a person that is espousing the extermination of the State of Israel, and therefore then giving them more credence in the world arena, and therefore saying they've probably been doing the right thing because you will sit down across the table from them, and that will legitimize their illegal behavior. The point is that throughout history, whether it be Ronald Reagan, who wouldn't sit down with Brezhnev, Andropov, or Chernenko until Gorbachev was ready with glasnost and perestroika, or whether it be Nixon's trip to China, which was preceded by Henry Kissinger many times before he went. Look, I'll sit down with anybody, but there's got to be preconditions, and those preconditions would apply